Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and I get so many questions on this, and someone sent me a private message this morning asking me about this, and they asked me, what is it specifically that makes bodybuilders look bigger or better than other people who train? What is it special that they do? Is it because they do all this isolation work? Why do their arms look bigger? Why do they look so much rounder and fuller? And things like that. And really, guys, a lot of people don't seem to grasp this, but this is going to be probably overly reductionist, but the majority of the differences that you see in actually very impressive looking bodybuilders can be attributed to three things: genetics, drugs, and body fat. And what do I mean by the genetics? Well, they simply look bigger because they have better muscle insertions. They oftentimes have fuller muscle bellies, and generally anyone who has been successful at any sort of physique competition is genetically above average in those areas. They might not have the best of the best. They might not be elite level genetics, but anybody who's winning a bodybuilding show or a figure show isn't anywhere near the genetic bottom of the bucket. Anybody earning a pro card is genetically blessed to some degree. And the average Joe is not going to look like them, even if you use the same drugs, the same training, the same diet. It's just not going to happen. Their structure is different. And case in point, you take my arms, for example. My arms measure a hell of a lot bigger than a lot of people probably realize if I were to wrap a tape around them. You put me next to Chris Jones and we both flex our arms, Chris's arms are going to look better than mine. Because Chris is genetically gifted as hell. Period. I do not have the genetic gifts he has. I couldn't train to look like he does. It would never happen. He has amazing arm insertions and muscle bellies that I do not possess. Therefore, even if my arms were taping at the same body fat a ½ inch bigger than his arms would still look bigger than mine. Wouldn't matter if mine were actually bigger. His would look bigger and better. Nothing I can do about it. And for most of you, that would also probably be true because you don't have the top 1% arm genetics that someone like Chris has. Now, the drugs, they play a huge role. And this isn't just an enhanced bodybuilding. Natural bodybuilding, natural figure competitions, drug-free powerlifting, all this shit is full of drugs. Drug testing doesn't mean anything. There's some guys who are genetically gifted and still doing well in those because they bust their ass and have amazing genetics. But there's a whole hell of a lot of drugs. Because not everybody competing at that top level has the genetics to compete with the guy with that ultra elite genetics who pulled it off natural. They have to have the drugs to place 2 spots behind him. Or 3 spots or 5 spots behind that genetic freak. They don't have a choice. But drugs themselves play a role, and even that comes into with the arm size. People will ask me, well, why do powerlifters, top-level powerlifters in the same rough weight, look like they have smaller arms than top bodybuilders? Well, it's not because they do less isolation work. I know plenty of powerlifters who do 20 sets of bicep isolation and 20 sets of tricep isolation a week in addition to all their big compounds. It's not the training. They probably don't have the same genetic insertions. A few do, but most don't. And they don't inject anything in their arms. Most big bodybuilders, they're carrying a lot of scar tissue that is actually oil or scar tissue inside the muscle. It's not even muscle. And there's some of that to some extent even in the natural world. It's not the training difference there. It's what they're injecting into their arms to make them bigger. That's why Dan Green doesn't have as big of arms as a bodybuilder who weighs the same weight that he does at the same height. And then lastly comes down to body fat or even the dryness level, and the dryness factor is drugs again, diuretics, hardening drugs. That plays a role in how shredded they look, but body fat. You could take a lot of serious strength athletes and rip them down to bodybuilder levels of leanness and they would look like bodybuilders. So these are your 3 factors. That is what makes bodybuilders look like bodybuilders. It's not their training. Whether it's in tested bodybuilding or untested bodybuilding, you will see 3 guys with similar proportions and similar physiques up on the same stage who have training styles that look literally nothing alike. You'll have one of them doing Menger's type heavy duty shit You'll have another who uses upper-lower splits, some sort of mixed hypertrophy power days. And you'll have the next one who does an ultra high volume, high rep body part split. It's 3 different as you could possibly get types of training, and they'll all look similar. It's not their training. Looking like a bodybuilder ultimately comes down to 3 things again: genetics, drugs, and body fat levels. You could throw in dryness, but dryness can be a combination of the last 2. Alright guys, that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it has been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.